Here it is the second time. Verse 24, God gave them up to uncleanness. Here, verse 26, God gave them up to vile passions. I'm reading the New King James. For even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. He's talking about lesbianism primarily. He says they exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. He says that the act of homosexual sin is against nature. Again, the parts don't fit. It's against nature. God gave them up. Verse 27, likewise also the men. So it wasn't just the women. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the women, burned in their lust for one another. What a sad state. They burned in their lust for one another. We see that today. I don't know if you've ever seen some of these gay pride parades and the footage of it in San Francisco and these major cities, not only in the United States, but other nations of the world. It's not just the United States that's fallen into this depravity and this immorality and this indecency and sin. But if you've seen any of the footage, or even God forbid if you've been there to watch one of them, it is moral depravity, uncleanness, immorality on full display. I mean, I can't even describe, don't even want to, some of the things that go on at those things. And people think it's humorous. They think it's funny. They think it's all entertainment. How do you think God thinks about it? Well, we know how God thinks about it. He tells us here. It grieves the heart of God to see his creation turn from him and give themselves up to vile passions and exchange the natural use for what is against nature, to burn in their lust for one another. Goes on to say, men with men committing what is shameful. Committing what is shameful. That's a far cry from how society treats it today, like it's normal, natural, nothing wrong with it. No, God says it's shameful. Shameful. It's interesting. I was reading of a article in Time magazine. Now, this will tell you how much things have changed in the last 70 years. There was actually it was a letter to the editor in Time magazine back in the early 1950s, and the person who wrote the letter was advocating for the acceptance and the normalization of homosexuality, and talking about how there's nothing wrong with it and it's perfectly normal, yada, yada, yada. Now, get this. Can you imagine the mainstream media responding this way today? But this is what Time magazine wrote in a very short and curt response after the letter to the editor back in the early 1950s. I think it's about 1952. Time magazine, quote, said this after this person tried to advocate for the normalizing homosexuality. Time magazine editorialized after that letter, quote, frankly, it gives us the creeps, period. Can you imagine the mainstream media responding that way today? And yet that shows how mankind has gone down, down, down. And that's what all Romans 1, the latter part here, is talking about. The downward spiral of man. I'll summarize that here when we get done, but you can just see it just goes down, 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 down. Without God, we just go down, down, down. It's kind of like the law of entropy. Things left to themselves will just go to ruin. They'll just deteriorate. Well, humankind is that way. Left to themselves, they'll just get more and more sinful, more and more wicked, more and more depraved, more and more idolatrous, and do more and more evil and wicked things. It goes from fornication and idolatry to homosexuality and lesbianism to pedophilia and pornography to even bestiality and all kinds of wickedness and things. It's just the history of mankind. There's no denying it. And it's the ruin of society after society. In Time Magazine back then also at that same time commented on an editor for McCall's magazine, if you recall that magazine, McCall's magazine, and this editor had written some fictional pieces. Now again, think of this. This is just fictional pieces, but through these fictional pieces, as the devil is wont to do, where he was breaking down barriers and taboo subjects and such. But in his first fictional piece was he was advocating for the tolerance of divorce or tolerance for divorce. Look where we're at today. And then the second fictional piece, he was advocating for tolerance for adultery. Look where we're at today. And then in the next fictional piece, it was advocating for tolerance for homosexuality. That was, scandalous pretty much at that time for a major magazine editor to write something like that. But look where we're at today. I mean, if you take the biblical stand against divorce, against adultery, against homosexuality, well, you're considered a hate monger and a bigot and a religious nut, religious zealot, and all, just for standing up for God's truth. God knows what's best for humankind, for you, for me, for all of us. God's not trying to take away our happiness or our joy or our peace or contentment or satisfaction. He's wanting to give us everything we need so we have happiness and joy and peace and contentment and satisfaction. And that's by following his ways, obeying his laws, listening to his voice, being led by the Spirit. The writer of Galatians says, walk in the Spirit and you won't fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And then you'll bear the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, who wouldn't want those kind of fruit? We're going to see 22 fruit of sin here toward the end of this chapter, but who wouldn't want those 9 fruit of the Spirit? Hallelujah. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, and we'll take this up from there. All this week, we're looking at this, and share this with others, like it on the YouTube page, and continue to believe God to speak to you in this, and share it. Be encouraged. God bless you.